Hi, I'm Harriet Tinker, and here are this week's top stories that we have for you. India and China approved their first homemade COVID-19 vaccines. She has grown the organization from when it was about to shut down. Meet Redya AC Awards Lifetime Achievement Award recipient, Alima Ali. Today, we are pleased to host the first community discussions on issues of paramount importance to our communities with key stakeholders so as to bring awareness to issues of importance to us. Beginning today with gang involvement of our youths. Stay tuned to the panel discussion coming up. Now, the news in details. Football superstar Lionel Messi is dethroned. The Football Association of Zambia says an incredible achievement by Zambian icon Godfrey Chitalu, better known as Yuka, beats Lionel Messi, who currently holds the record for the most goals scored in a calendar year in football, 91 goals in 2012. The Football Association of Zambia, FAZ, said former Zambian national football team striker Chitalu has scored an astonishing 107 goals in 1972 while playing for the Cowboy Warriors at the time. The first Indian and Chinese-made vaccines approved. This week, the Indian drug regulator gave the green light to the COVID-19 vaccine developed by Oxford University and AstraZeneca and Covaxin, a locally made COVID-19 vaccine developed by the Indian company Bharat Biotech. All COVID-19 vaccines will be manufactured in India. Also this week, China approves its first homemade COVID-19 vaccine, Sinopharm. No African country has yet approved a COVID-19 vaccine so far for a continent of over 1 billion people. AC Awards updates. She took over the organization when it was about to shut down due to lack of funds. Today, she has built it into a women's hub with dozens of staff and a 2-story building in Red Deer. Meet Alima Ali, AC Awards Lifetime Achievement Award recipient.
Oh my God. It is very exciting. It is very rewarding that somebody recognizes that all the things that you do for your community. So whatever I didn't do for myself, but I did for my community. And I am very grateful that I received this kind of award. Thank you so much for all the people that they thought that I deserve to have this award. Thank you.
Alberta's version of Vacation Gate pokes its deceitful face beyond its mask as Premier tries to remask UCP COVID elitism. UCP MLAs and senior staffers were outed for sneaking to vacation abroad after yelling to the top of their voices to the rest of Albertans, stay home and save lives. The vacation prioritizing MLAs and senior UCP staff members were forced to resign their position by Alberta Premier after heavy pressure from Albertans. Here's a list of MLAs and staff resignation after the controversial vacation abroad. Grand Prairie MLA and Municipal Affairs Minister Tracy Allard, Kenny's Chief of Staff. Jamie Huckabee, Calgary's client. Jeremy Nixon, Red Deer South. Jason Stefan, Calgary's Pagans. Tanya Thea. Tony Yao of Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo, and Lesia Slave Lakes, Pat Brian. This week, Fashion of the Week. A couple of weeks ago, masks were made mandatory in indoor spaces across Alberta. We're happy to be joined by local Edmonton designer Kuanyliet Kogalt, owner of KYN Apparel, to run us through some of the different mask designs that they have. Ear savers, mask with ties, mask with elastic, and antibacterial masks. For more information on different mask design and how to buy, please go to kynapparel.ca.
Hi. So like you said, my name is Alet and I'm from KYN Apparel. And since the beginning of the pandemic, we have been making cloth face masks so that we can kind of cater to what people needed to have. If you want something that is sustainable, so you can wash and reuse and save the planet in the same time you're saving yourself, then we have some options for you. So we have the main design, and the first design was our plain, plain, it's kind of like 100% cotton, 3 layers so that people can breathe easily and still be kind of safe. So this is one of those kind of designs. When you look inside, you see that we have the main layer that we see outside, we have a second layer, and then we have a third layer that actually plays at the same time as a pocket if you want to add a filter. And our masks do come with 3 filters so that you can kind of try them out and see if this is something that you would like. And if you do, you are welcome to buy more filters from us or elsewhere. There are a lot of stores that are selling them. So we have these first designs with elastic, goes around your ears. And then we have the second design that plays more like this. Still the same thing with 3 layers. And this one has straps that goes here and here so that you can tie them up. And so if you're using your mask for a longer period of time at work, this would be good, so it saves your ears. And lastly, but not least, we have this design. This is the inside and this is the outside, where it's made out of a cloth that is already treated with antibacterial. So you don't have to wash this one as you would be washing the cloth face mask. And it has a waterproof and antibacterial property, and it kind of like one piece around the ears too. So right now on our store, we have different kind of options made with the African vibrant prints. So colors, if you're not into the yellow, you get the kind of like all around colors, blue and green. And we have this one that is more green and yellow. And then we have this one that is kind of one of the favorites right now. Works really well. And more popping colors, we have this style, which is red and bold with designs that are more kind of like ethnic African style. And then we have this floral red one too. So altogether, we have quite a few variety online. Do know that we kind of change often because we're trying to be sustainable and using material in a sustainable way so that we don't waste the cloth. So we do have other designs, usually bigger pieces, and when we have left out, we use them to make the masks. So if you like something and you don't get it and you come back, it's run out. It's unfortunately what happens often. So if you see a design you like, please go for it. And the masks are made with nose wires for the ones that have the elastic ones. Really good for people that wears their glasses for fogging.
Diversity Profile of the Week. This week, we're proud to highlight the story of Stush Joseph, a man who knows too well how to transition from a dying industry, retailing record players and cassettes, to beauty products today, with 2 locations in Calgary. Stuch migrated to Canada from Antigua and Barbuda in 1981 with his mother and siblings. He always had the dream to have his own business. In May of 1993, Stuch opened his first business in the southeast of Calgary, Alberta, Island Beat. Island Beat started as a small shop with records, cassettes, and today is the longest standing business, hair salon, barber shop, and barber supply store in the city, specializing in black hair.
My name is Stuch Joseph from Island Beat. I've been here for 27 years and I carry a wide variety of beauty supplies for African, Caribbean, etc., products and hair extensions and so on.
Coronavirus Project Cool Times. If you're feeling sick or have any symptoms related to COVID-19, stay home. They support if you need to stay at home while you're sick or in isolation due to COVID-19. The Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit provides $500 per week for up to a maximum of 2 weeks. For workers who are sick or need to self-isolate due to COVID-19 or have an underlying health condition that puts them of greater risk of getting COVID-19. The Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit also provides $500 per week for up to 26 weeks per household for parents who need to care for a child or is sick or because schools, daycares, or care facilities are closed due to COVID-19. Also, people flying into Canada must test negative for COVID-19 to be allowed to come into Canada. In Diversity TV International News, Central African Republic incumbent Faustin Archange Touadéra was re-elected in the December 27 election, according to the country's Electoral Commission on Monday. In an election that the opposition asked to be called off due to one of the worst security situations in the world with United Nations, French, Russian, Rwandan, and numerous armed groups parade the country. Other international news. On January 1st, 2021, Africa created a free trade zone, African Continental Free Trade Agreement, on the same day that UK officially exited the European Union. Dr. Banks Odole, ICT Management and Leadership Professor at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, SAIT, shed some light on this free trade zone for Africa's about 1.3 billion people. Welcome, Dr. Banks. Please shed some light on this free trade zone that was implemented. I believe it was implemented in 2018, and then it just goes live this year in January 2021. However, with the pandemic, I'm sure it's going to be a slow ride just implementing it. Could you please share some insight on this trade, please?
Yeah, thank you, Aret. Thank you so much for having me. And then it's a good thing to talk about the African Continental Free Trade Area, or the agreement, as people call it. As you rightly said, this was implemented in 2018, but then that conversation started way back in Ethiopia in 2012. with the 18th Assembly of the Head of States of the 55 member states. As of today, only 54 out of the 55 states had already ratified that or signed off that, and then about 33 of them had ratified that. It's something that African ought to have had before this time, and it's a good development for us at this time. So the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement represents a significant opportunity for countries in Africa to boost our growth, to reduce poverty and broaden our economic inclusions. And then the potential impact of that CFTA, as we call it, will include, among other things, intra-African trade, and then that is bring about manufacturing exports, job creation for youth, and in poverty alleviation. And then the potential for CFTA is immense for both the structural transformation and poverty alleviation in Africa. And if this is well implemented in the face of all infrastructural decay in Africa, I think Africa will go a long place in order to compete in the area of industrial revolutions of the world in the 21st generation. Yep.
This is definitely exciting. I think when I heard about it, I was quite excited, especially more so for the women, because I know the women are the one that usually they tend to do all the border exchange, and they're the ones that get imprisoned and that sort of thing. So this is really exciting for the women. Do you have any sort of information you can share on how they can how it's going to be so successful for the women, especially the ones that are, I believe there's about 70% of them who do actually get arrested for going through illegally and selling their products. Please share some insight on it.
Yeah, one of the benefits, there are quite a number of benefits that CFTA will bring to Africa. Like you rightly mentioned, I will list a few of them. One of them is the expected increments in women's earning, the earning power for women in Africa. So the CFTA is expected to lift 30 million Africans out of extreme poverty and boost the income of nearly 68 million others who live below $5.50 per day as of today. Again, CFTA, as it's called, is expected to increase the income of African countries, the nations in Africa, by $514 billion by year 2035. Significant among the benefits, like you rightly mentioned, the enormous wage gain for women is expected to increase by 10.5%, which is more than the 9.9% expected for men when CFTA is implemented. And then we're expected to boost the wages of skilled worker and unskilled worker. Expectedly across Africa, unskilled workers are expected to get 10.3 wage increments, while skilled workers are expected to get about 9.8% increment. So this is a tremendous opportunity for women and even our low earners at this time across Africa.
Thank you so much, Dr. Odali. I'm sure if we had more time, you could get into all the details that has impacted Africa with these new tariffs. So I want to thank you for taking time and sharing us some insight with this new free trade zone. And I'm sure this conversation is just the beginning of many more to come. So I want to thank you for being here and sharing some insight. Have a great night.
Thank you, Harriet. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Again, dish of the week. Our second dish of the week will feature a local cook in Calgary. Bola of Flavors Kitchen in Calgary prepared the West African delicacy called Egusi soup, eaten with fufu, rice, or other starchy food. Egusi soup is made from seeds of certain species of African melon, dried and grounded and cooked with peppers, giving its bright white color glittering below the oil. You can try the delicious Egusi Soup of Flavors restaurant in Calgary on 4129 4th Street, Northwest Calgary.
I'm going to show you how to cook Egusi soup. Egusi soup is African pumpkin seed cooked with kale, in this part of the world. It's a different label used back at home, but kale is the closest thing that is close to the vegetable that we use with it. So you have egusi, some dry fish, stockfish, and some crayfish. I have some that I've already pre-washed, which I'm also going to pour in the blender with the water and some peppers, onion, and of course, habanero. These you have to blend and puree until smooth. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Well, the peppers in it gives it a little bit color, and that's what you need. You don't need too much of it. So to cook egusi soup, you need some palm oil, which unlike the groundnut oil, it's a little bit because of the weather, it's solidified. So you put it in the oil on the fire and let it separate. Also, you add some onion. Onion is a key thing when you are cooking. It adds the flavor of the food. So at this point, you are ready to add your egusi, and that also cooks down. This is the egusi. It's ready to, I'm sure it's cooked. At this time, you can see what it looks like, cuddled together, and that's it. At this point in time, you can taste and to see if your seasoning is enough. If not, add some salt. Then you add your vegetables. The kale, which has already been pre-cut. Give it another 2 minutes for the kale to cook down a little bit. Voila, egusi is ready. Okay, so the egusi is ready. Look at the colors, the green and the fish. Oh, even the smell. So this is what you need to eat your pounded yam, or ugali as it's called in some part of East Africa. Also, your egusi can also be eaten with your steamed rice.
Announcement. As part of efforts to engage multicultural communities in Edmonton on policing, the Edmonton Police Service, EPS, is recruiting members of the Indigenous Advisory Council. The council is looking for Indigenous community members who have interest in creating change in policing institutions, who have various lived experiences in tradition, culture, academic, poverty, marginalization, etc. The application process is to submit a letter of interest indicating your experiences, what you would bring to the council, and why you want to join this council. The deadline is January 31st, and letters can be sent to this email. Diversity TV, coming to your community. Every week, we will discuss the issues that matter to you, by you, and for you. Starting today with youth involvement in gang activity. A moment of silence for Cody Akoar, 20, and Kuanyliet Kogalt, 20. Both of South Sudanese descent were confirmed dead in their car by the Calgary Police at 9:20 a.m. Tuesday, December 29, 2020, when police were called in North East Calgary. The Calgary Police says the shooting is targeted and are asking for help to identify their killers. Nobody grows up dreaming to join a gang. If that happens, then sadly, the society they live in has failed them. And due to the persistence of these gang issues in low-income neighborhoods, today, we want to bring awareness to this topic by discussing solutions with those making a difference on the ground. Panelists joining this discussion today on Diversity TV are Luketa Mpindu, Executive Director for AJFAS in Edmonton. Joseph Lurie, a youth worker with the Edmonton Mennonite Center for Newcomers and social worker by out of the center. Gaga, North East Calgary, South Sudanese youth advocate and founder of YYC Kids Ride. John Huntley, EPS Youth Justice Programs Coordinator. Sergeant Kendall Booth, EPS Diversion Fast Unit, Youth Services Branch. Sergeant Emil Chan, EPS School Resources Officer Unit. Sergeant Emil Chan, EPS School Resource Office Unit. Sergeant Ryan Ferry, EPS Gang Suppression Team. Constable Stuart Whitmire, Gang Suspension Team, Calgary Police Service. Rhea Sampella will start the discussion.
Hello, I'll first like to share for our viewers what the Calgary Police Department defines as a gang, which is an association or group of 3 or more individuals, whether formal or informal, which is involved in a criminal activity on a regular basis. Most gangs in Calgary are made up of young adults, but even elementary aged, and can be recruited. So in Edmonton, we've had instances of gun violence and gangs that are linked to shootings that happen within Edmonton. And some of these are linked to Somali gangs that are in Edmonton. The issue of gangs also involves people using drugs and the issue of gangs involves them using drugs and using weapons and guns that can be linked to a lot of these shootings. So I guess in this framework, we see that there's a certain type of person that is more likely to be introduced to gang violence. And I wanted to ask if any of the panelists here can speak to that.
Okay, yes. So it's M. Chan here with the Edmonton Police Service School Resource Officer Unit. And again, our thoughts go out to the young fellas whose lives were lost in Calgary and the tragedy around gangs. And I thank you for this opportunity to be a part of the panel. And I like the strategic involvement of John Huntley's beside me, as well as Kendall Booth from our diversion, and Ryan Ferry, who is with gang suppression. So even with Edmonton Police Service, you can see that there are multiple branches and units who are very alive to the fact that there is a gang challenge in our city and in Calgary, and we're approaching it from multiple viewpoints. But you'll see that the 4 of us from the police service directly really are attentive to early education, proactive identification, positive youth engagement with the police, and a real true lens on diversion, so that we're not criminalizing these youth, especially if it's a minor crime. So I'll just lead off with that kind of introductory phrase.
Yes, thank you for that. And there's also the issue of, the two young men, Cody Akoar and Kuanyliet Kogalt, both aged 20, were of Sudanese descent. And it's the issue of immigrants and marginalized communities having trouble integrating into society. And this is why we see that they look to gang involvement.
I'm just going to jump there and just add into what the constable said and also what you have introduced. Once again, my name is Gargar. I'm a youth advocate in Calgary. Although sometimes we have some death toll that overdoses, the shooting, and then of course the suicide, that those 3, I think I usually take them as a correlations. And we see them anywhere from the city in Calgary and Edmonton. But definitely, I think we start with what we have at hand and what can we work with. I just want to point out to what the constable said. It comes back and to that question in identifications, and also knowing at what turning point does the positive youth who is doing positive in community turn into the bad side. So that's the second stage, actually, because the first stage touched on, which is the new immigrant, dealing with the new laws, trying to fit in, and finally giving up and saying, there's a role model that look up to him. And the key point there, it's their skills setting. In this instant, those kids, their skills was in basketball. So within the last 2 years, they were actually almost becoming stars. One of them, indeed, I believe, according to the family, got accepted to go down to South in US in a scholarship. So the issues becomes like, what are the grassroots issues that turn such a young person with incredible future to that? So that's one of the strategic that we have to look into. In that bracket, you find those are the young people who are mostly came here new, didn't know anything, and they start growing up and they start falling into the vacuums. And through that, those are the vulnerability. But also the youth who has come. I came here when I was 17 years old, didn't know English, and I didn't get a lot of opportunities. One of them is attending high school. So these ones you start feeling alienated, and it's all about like finding friendship, but then it's all about fitting in. One of the things that I see there, it's also the definitions between the groups and gangs. And the group is basically, somebody who is calling this kid saying, go to a basketball court, come play with me, and soon they have a bonding perspective. And then it turned to maybe even now you have to defend your friends, or you have to stand up for what you believe in, or even you have to defend yourself. So sometimes, through the bullying, that you need somebody to stand up for you. So that turns to maybe you have another 4 people that you need to support you. And later on, it starts moving from that to maybe now on the socioeconomics, which comes back to that employability and the opportunities. So it's like, okay, if I do this, it's an easy way out. But the unfortunate part, the both sides comes up into one setting. And I think it comes back to vulnerability, and it comes back also to what you touched on. Most of issues starts with the low income demographics. In this instance, I believe I can confidently say 80% to 90% of those youth who are involved, when we see their roots, it comes back specifically to a greater forest land. So those 2 young adults were living in forest land, which is knowing to have poverty rates. And at the end also, even if they move out to different part of the city, the opportunities that didn't exist in the earliest age hand them back. Even when they grow up, they still didn't have the opportunities. So once again, I just want to thank. It's the small things that I wanted to add on into that conversations, but I would love to join more.
I wanted to also ask the Edmonton Police, what is the role of the police in all this? The Edmonton Crime Report states that the background of some of Somali immigrants and refugees is coming from a war-ravaged country, makes it hard for them to talk to people in uniform and relate to them. So how can the police work in solving this problem?
Just speaking from my perspective, what my unit does, and we don't work in uniform, specifically just because we want to get that engagement with youth from all different areas. I realize the uniform at times can be kind of off-putting, and it's hard to have a conversation with someone that's wearing that. But our youth, what our goal is frontline members, when a young person commits a criminal offense, they can refer that youth to us if they meet certain criteria. And that is that they are more of a first-time offender, and that they are willing to participate, and their parents are willing to participate, or their caregivers. So our goal is then to hook them up to, much like other members of the panel here, community supports that are meaningful and useful to them, not only to them, but also their parents and their caregivers. So we do use the Edmonton Mennonite Center for newcomers. We use the African Center. We have partnerships across the city with a lot of different people and supports. And I think a lot of the time it's bringing those community agencies together to support that youth and the family, because we have a lot of great resources, but it's just working together, I think, more effectively sometimes it really helps.
What are the challenges that affect successful implementation of these strategies?
I can certainly say that I'll even extend back to where Mr. Gar was talking about the roots of where this gangsterism starts, and we can talk about the young men, primarily young men that are involved in street gangs, and the street level implementation of violence at the root of the community concern. But we can talk about much larger issues regarding overall community harm, everything from people being diverted away from productive adoption of school and employment, to neighborhoods being affected, to lives being ended, the effects of drug consumption and drug sales and firearms trafficking and stolen property. It really is very nebulous when we talk about the community harm that is linked to gangs and organized crime groups. And I want to make it very, very clear that this is not an immigrant issue. It's not about immigrants lead to gangsterism, or immigrants lead to being an immigrant leads to violent crime. It is a precondition that is makes young men particularly susceptible to some of the recruitment for organized crime groups or gangs. But we are very clear on knowing and understanding that it is not a predisposition in the immigrant community. And so when we start to look at some of the strategies going forward and looking at some of the barriers and trying to remove the barriers, having multiple perspectives and multiple voices and multiple faces of a solution, I think, is a primary first step. And so when Sergeant Booth talks about the diversion unit not working in uniform, that's very important. My unit, we are 99% of the time we're in uniform. I can't be in uniform today. I'm at home in the basement. But we think it's very important that we are in uniform as much as possible, and we speak to not only the suspects and the subjects who are known confirmed gangsters, but also to the communities that are negatively affected. We're in uniform. We're trying to protect entire communities and entire families, and we want to be seen as guardians of the peace. And so us being in uniform, certainly where there's reluctance to cooperate with uniforms, we're trying to melt that ice and bridge those divides every day. So that's certainly one of the challenges. Do we present ourselves in uniform or out of uniform? What is a particular strategy? When we really get down to it, when we look at individuals that are involved in gang crime, we try and look at their motivations. And there's a lot of emerging research, particularly out of North America, and in regards to the commodities being trafficked and sold, and profit, either social profit or monetary profit or material benefit. We look at motivations for each and every single one of these young people that are involved in gangsterism. And when we try and tailor a response to interject and try to stop the behavior, we need to be able to be nimble and agile. Sometimes an intervention can happen prior to a young person or an individual getting involved in gang life, and that intervention can come in the form of police officer and other social partners coming and approaching that person or the support network and offering a better way. Sometimes an appropriate intervention is arrest. Sometimes it is incarceration. Sometimes it is daily contact, trying to say, I care about what happens to you. We don't want to see you or any of your loved ones come to a bitter end. And we need to find a way out of the gang lifestyle once they're entrenched. So the barrier is having those individuals come to the table and meet us to tell us what their motivations are and what they would need to be able to exit or avoid gang life, and to be able to bring community partners together to offer a united front from everyone from the education perspective to perhaps there's some religious or community needs that need to be met, some peer group engagement, employment, all of those other sorts of facets that limit an individual's ability to resist participation in gang life. Those are the challenges I think that we're alive to, and we're trying to research as much as possible, and resourcing appropriately is the largest challenge that we face from an organizational perspective.
For that, I'd like to bring in Lukita.
Yes, thank you so much, and I would like to thank the Diversity TV for this meeting. My name is Luketa Mpindu. I'm the Executive Director of the French organization Alliance Jeunesse Famille de l'Alberta Society. That is the first organization in the Francophone community in Alberta with the mandate of crime prevention among Francophone African Black youth. Since 20 years, we are working in the area of crime prevention through social development program. We did program since our creation in December 1999 in Edmonton. Many programs in that area to focus on preventive factor. So experience after 20 years, some problem in the Francophone community with African from different countries, Congolese, Rwandese, Cote d'Ivoire, and everything, homicides, drug, and everything. Something we couldn't trust could happen in the Francophone community. So this is the reality now. We are on it and find how we could work with the community to stop that problem in our community. Also another issue, even if the school, we didn't trust we could help some problem of crime in the school. So now we do have in our organization the program that we call Youth Justice Committee. DL with some youth from 12 to 17 years who is in trouble with the law. So the experience we had with that program since 2010, now 10 years, is that we get more the Black youth from Africa. What is the experience? So this is like, we get them more and more, and we say that is the future prisoner we are working with 17 years. This is something we said, oh, they are the problem of drug, theft and vandalism and everything. It's happened with small, and we could grow to get to community. I used to be the chair of the National Ethnocultural Advisor Committee with Correctional Service Canada for 12 years. I did the opportunity, Joseph Yuri knows about that. I invited them in our national meeting in Halifax. I did the opportunity to travel around the country to the federal institution. I met with inmates, ethnocultural from different countries. Let us say there is a problem in the federal institution.
Do you want to chime in to what Lukita was saying?
Yeah, I could certainly say that across the gang spectrum, so when we take a look at gang motivations and gang participation, in the Edmonton region, we can say, and across Alberta, and I don't have stats in front of me, so I can't say with precision, but people that participate in gangster gang behavior is somewhere in the thousands across all of Alberta, with each major urban center being the focused kind of hub for regional gang alliances. We're talking young men primarily in the thousands. And so when we take a look at the transition from youth who is susceptible to being recruited to participate in gang behavior, I think Mr. Mpindu is probably very right that there are a number of opportunities for us to interrupt that cycle and reduce someone's ability and susceptibility to being recruited into that gang lifestyle. I think that research has shown early intervention is worth every dollar and more in terms of return on investment when we get people like M-Chan and Kendall Booth and their units to try and provide a degree of intervention. We can stem the flow of young men into this gang behavior. When we look at, I would again love to have some more stats in front of me, but from a socioeconomic perspective, in terms of the motivations for participation in gang behavior is primarily, generally, either having to do with material gain in terms of money, or social status in terms of feelings of camaraderie or power and the ability to do what they want and operate outside the law. And there are, all the time, we're trying to see and discover more and more specific intervention strategies for deterring people from participating in gangs. It said very simply, we talk about the carrot and the stick. And the carrot being, if we can find you early enough and divert you away from gang participation, well, then certainly we want to choose that first as a collective across our organization and across the multiple community organizations and families and community groups. The stick has to be considered, but it has to be selectively applied. And when Luketa spoke about the incarcerated population, I am very alive and aware. I think we're collectively as a Western democracy alive and understanding that the demographics of the incarcerated population sometimes reflects problems in how we're encountering and dealing with people that are going towards crime and criminality. So when he's talking about early intervention, I think we've absolutely seen early benefits here in Edmonton, and the research shows there is a ton of backing for that to be the first and primary intervention strategy. Early intervention, getting them before they get into gangs. It's very difficult though when you start talking about some budgetary and resource constraints. So that's something that I can't speak to, but I can certainly verify that is our goal from an Edmonton Police Service perspective, to early intervene, to divert, to give opportunity, and then to employ other strategies and tactics once that or if that fails.
So Ryan, could you just give us a look, what is this profit that motivates youth to go and join gangs? Because you, on the Edmonton Police website, it's outlined as one of the things that motivates youth to get into gangs.
Well, I'll say this, that the criminal market, so is that individuals operate, do so to either protect criminal commodities markets or territory. We have much less in Edmonton and Alberta territory violence, and we have way more illegal commodity related violence. So that's the sale of drugs, the importation of drugs, prostitution, stolen property, stolen vehicles. And without trying to advertise the benefits of getting involved in gang motivated or gang related crime, young people stand to make thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in the same amount of time that they could make 10 times less money trying to get an honest job. I guess we'll call it an honest job. So the possibility that somebody could enter into this criminal lifestyle and get themselves into a position of wealth and power and status, or even opportunity for themselves and opportunity for others that they're close to, that is a very real draw that we have to take into account for when trying to understand somebody's motivations. But I think it bears mentioning that of those thousands of people that I spoke about who are involved in gang behavior, there are a significant portion of those individuals who come from very good backgrounds. We have gang identified organized crime groups that they grew up in $1 million homes and come from affluent families. The opportunity and the benefits of power can't go understated. And those individuals are oftentimes very, very capable of concealing their gang involvement. They're capable of recruiting in large numbers because it's very, very intoxicating. It's been described as intoxicating to be presented with somebody who is so affluent and so powerful and so cool that it's hard for us as a group of individuals to convince somebody not to participate in that lifestyle. So when we're talking about the draws and motivations, that profit is certainly a very, very strong motivator.
I was just going to jump in and earlier, I think they're right on points, and that's what we have experienced, especially talking to the youth and when they reach out. So thank you, Constable Ryan, for also articulating on what one of our leaders has said. And definitely one thing that I wanted to also point out, it's the help with the grassroots. I think they say always help cover one issue, then waiting until the grass cuts all on fire, then we come in with the resources. And I think that's one of the issues that I realized throughout. So what I mean by that, it's and what he's talking about when he said, there is certain issues here that we discover this demographic. So in Calgary, when we went to I was invited in youth corrections. And what they had said, they said, hey, there is a problem here. All these youth, we saw the trending spike that is happening. There is a reoffending that is happening. There are some kids who are breaking their probations and coming back in. And we started building on some strategies, preventative. But the issues is like always the barriers is how can we bring all these issues to become an action plan? So I'll give one example. Right now, we're working on youth, something called YYC Kids Learn. And we identify some families that came forward, they're trusting us, and they said, hey, my kids were in problems, were in this. Now they can't even go to online classes. They're failing behind. They don't even have computers. So we went back as a grassroots and we said, we're going to help. So we went to different organizations trying to find those helps. The first barriers that we kept finding is the documentation. So from non-for-profit perspective, how long you've been in the non-for-profit, and then the charity status. And I think those are the issues that whoever is helping on the grassroots, it's finding now, and to come back to those issues, why we're not solving them early. The other issue.
How can the community help these youth, as we see that some of these youth go to gangs because they feel a sense of family and also they stand to gain something? So how can the community come and help?
Absolutely, community is ready to help, and when I talked to those two mothers, they came back and they said, hey, Gar, we are on board, how can we help? And I think sometimes as a youth advocate, we feel our hands are tied. And what I mean by that is when we bring in, we need somewhere a fast tracking where we can bring those issues forward and have to work on something. So you mentioned earlier, like YYC Kids Right. We discovered that they were stolen. And we said, I think those youth, it's not that they wanted to steal sometimes. It's you see something and your family can afford it, you can do this. So as a collective community base, rather than the family doing it by themselves, so we were able to raise 500 bikes. All these came out the same place that we are in as a youth center now. We have around 15 youth who are always riding bikes around, the same bikes that we give. And we told them, now give those bikes, when you grow up, give it to another person. That's the community-based perspective that I was talking about. Because some families, they're having issues and they wanted to first come forward with the trustful channel. So one of the things that I usually say is the collaboration also, like with the EPS or the law enforcement. They're doing great. Like, the things that the constable talked about it. But I think there is that channel or there is that bridge that sometimes built maybe on the trusting issues. A family might know, my kid went through, the police might have called the families and said, hey, your kid now did this, let's work. I think there is a piece of shame that comes with it. So the family sometimes try to hide it. And it goes from a kid who is stealing a candy to growing to a kid who is now involved in stealing vehicles. So the middle, somehow I say it's the encouragement to work on the robust, action plan where we can say there is this programs, let's support it as a grassroots base, and let's work like stairs where if the community base, and usually I call them like community advocates, or people that a family could call 2 a.m. Like those families, sometimes they call us at 2, 3 a.m. and say, hey, how can we help? And usually we have a African liaison constable. That's the second problem. So in Calgary, we have only one constable that is dealing with the entire African portfolio. So for those things to get handled and to look at it is also looking into that department and saying, do we have enough? How can we take the same preventative actions, the same like Constable Ryan said, to have that network, to bring it back to see, I usually say the green zone, which is the kids who never gone into issues yet. And those are the after schools, and to the yellow zone, which is 13 years old to 16, that always wanted to identify themselves, try to see the power, who they are, how to fit in, and also to work and trying to not find a jobs. And to the red zone, which is the one that, for example, got involved in the system coming back and forth. So those are the things that I would like to just add on into what Constable said. And basically, it's coming back to bring those network together and to bring the resources together and to have one action plan, for example, even once a year together, and to bring the resources together and to have one action plan, for example, even once a year.
Yes, thank you for that. I think Harriet wanted to chime in to say.
Oh, you bet. So what I wanted to share with everybody, I know we have so many experts here today, and I really wanted to get everybody to really share a bit of everything because there's many of us here on the panel. I know that Constable Stewart Whitmire just showed up a little bit after I did the name roll call. So I'd really like him to share some challenges perhaps, or tools that he can help our audience with what's going on with this gang involvement that we're discussing today?
So yeah, thank you. My name's Stuart. I'm from the Calgary Police Service, and just building on something what some of my colleagues were discussing. Some of the motivation and kind of risk factors we're seeing, of course, are financial. So we're seeing a lot of youth from kind of single family homes. Lots of times, like the eldest child, the eldest son is finding the need financially to provide for the family. And that's a big motivation for a lot of these kids to get involved in the gang lifestyle or the organized crime lifestyle. Additionally, we're seeing not just in those lower socioeconomic communities, but also the flip of that as well. We're seeing individuals who have come from middle-class homes or even wealthy homes, have grown up, done well in school, done well in sports, and perceivably have lots of opportunities ahead of them, yet they're drawn to that whole image that Sergeant Ferry was discussing there, kind of the glitz and glamour of the lifestyle, and being drawn to that, being drawn to the money, the cars, and the girls, and that sort of thing. And additionally, for other risk factors, what we're seeing is a lot of the gangs and organized crime groups that we're seeing here in Calgary are specifically targeting youth in these schools growing up that are vulnerable. They're specifically targeting vulnerable youth, be it youth that are bullied and have grown up being bullied, being perceived as an outcast, not having a lot of friends or a lot of connection in school, and then suddenly the flip of a switch, being recruited and having that acceptance from these members of the gang, that's a huge draw for them. Individuals who struggle with mental health issues as well, popular kids in school even, because they can network throughout high school and throughout kind of their communities, and so they're specifically getting targeted as well. And then individuals as well who face significant barriers, be it individuals who have moved to the community recently, perhaps who have immigrated recently and are facing barriers of language and other barriers of acceptance and so on, and they're finding that connection through being recruited into these gangs. So I think, yeah, all these factors kind of financially, and then also we're seeing individuals from more wealthier backgrounds. And then as well, these groups are specifically targeting these kids in these schools that are vulnerable.
Well, thank you, Constable Stewart. Now I know that we have John Huntley, who does work a lot with the youth. Now, would you like to share some of the tools that you have, some of the programs that you have for the youth that we can really we can learn from?
Sure, thank you for that. It's been very interesting listening to everybody's views and comments about why young men and women are attracted into this lifestyle. There's very many common themes that's running throughout everybody's conversations with regards to the typical type of young person that's recruited, which is there isn't one particular type per se. There's similarities there, but as rightly said, it goes from a broad spectrum from a poor family up to a very wealthy millionaire's family. So it's a very diverse group, this. And it's interesting about the motivation. When I asked my kids, where did it start? What attracted to you? And the common ground, and everybody's talking about, is, the finances, the glamour of it, the self of belonging, the family, the esteem, the lifestyle of attracting thousands of dollars in one day's work. So we've tried to replicate the employment side of it and offered employment opportunities and education and training. And some will grasp it, but the vast majority won't, because they see a hard day's labor with $200 at the end of it, as opposed to a 30-second phone call with $2,000 at the end of it. And that's really difficult to take away from a young egotistical male, for example, with all the glamour that comes with it. It's interesting as well with regards to the family side of it. I see a lot of my entrenched youth, 18, 19, 20-year-old, who have much younger siblings. And it's interesting that they don't want their siblings to follow the same path. So I think the comments that Constable Ryan had said with regards to the early intervention is key. I would like to say that focus is, I think, addressing the root problems with regards to education, to mentorship, to ethics, to morals within the family who can often struggle with this. My point of view, being from a high-risk youth worker perspective, is that in my particular field, there's such a large turnover with a population of professionals who offer this support. I think the one thing that is lacking for families and young men coming through this system at 12, 13, 14, up to 20-year-old is consistency. Kids that are involved in the justice system have so many people coming in out of their lives with the best intentions, but they tell the story, they tell the problems, they tell the barriers to a professional who may scratch the surface of trying to help, and then within 4 to 6 months, that person has moved on to other opportunities. Then another person comes in, they tell the same story, and it's just a repetitive machine, if you like, of the young person, being hopeful that there is opportunities there, then that's taken away, then another person comes in. So it's really difficult with regards to the relationship building and to the mentorship of a young person looking up to somebody who's trying to lead the right way, who's trying to educate in morals, in ethics. I think it's a professional problem that we face here in Canada. There's so much turnover. And I think we can identify where the root of the cause is. However, I think we must accept some responsibility in our failings with regards to the overall picture of addressing this at a root cause.
Thank you so much for that. There's so much to learn. I wanted Sergeant Chan to also have really to dig in and just share some what they're doing at an early age, right before they become youth. What are we doing?
Well, a key thing is just being there. And I know Kendall Booth mentioned earlier that his unit is not in uniform. We strongly encourage our SROs to be in uniform. And we have a lot of parallels between Edmonton and Calgary in that we have a school resource officer program. And that is really an opportunity for young people of every background to get to know a police officer through positive youth engagement. And I'm so happy to say that with the SRO program, 99% of our interaction with young people is positive and it's relationship building. And a real emphasis of our SROs is to identify those kids who might be at higher risk. And when we do that, we have the opportunity to lead them and to navigate them to special programs, whether it's an education program or even put on a presentation ourselves, or else encourage them to join some youth-focused programs. One that I would love to highlight that we have in Edmonton is the PIPE program, which is the Police and Youth Engagement Program that we've been running successfully for the past several years for young people from the Oromo, from the Sudanese, Somali, Eritrean, Ethiopian, Syrian, Iraqi communities, the list goes on, where they participate in a multi-week program with the police, and they build friendships. So when we hear the reason for kids joining gangs, it's a sense of belonging. But what we're doing now is providing a program where they can build friendships at an early age that hopefully becomes a lifelong friendship in a very positive environment. So that's one thing to cover off the sense of belonging. But then when the kids interact with the police officers, it's a positive engagement, and they know that police is a friendly person, is a friendly resource to go to for whatever is troubling them.
Thank you. I know the little kids always like police officers with the uniform. So you're doing great. Thank you, Sergeant Chan. Now, I know that Joseph Louis, and I know we're almost running out of time, but I wanted Joseph Louis to really also just share some of the things that he's doing in the community.
A lot of the stuff that we do as solutions, of course, include, thank you for bringing up the PIPE program. I was one of those founders in that PIPE program. And so it has been a very fantastic and successful program. We have also been running, after school programs. We've been running some academic and social support programs over weekends to get these youth and build, friendships, build character that they can defend and not be quickly lured into gang. But one of the problems I would say with the gang is also as a community we have failed these kids because of attitude. Attitude, for example, if you take the low-income areas or low-income places where housing where people are living, everybody would talk about it. But there will be no solutions and nothing abroad. And so if we were to look at these low income places and programs are taken there, this would be part of the solution to engage those kids from their young age, growing into youth and growing into adults. Then they would feel a sense of belonging. They wouldn't be feeling that sense of stigma. But because of that stigma, they quickly want to run away from those areas. And when they run, where are they running? They're running into the hands of the gangs. The other thing that community has also failed these kids is managing culture shock. Some of these kids we know have come from out, and when they come, things are so new, things look flashy, they want to touch every window. And so we as a community have not been able to manage that culture shock properly. The other thing has also to do with the community policing. The community policing has been a very good program, but I would say, talking about community policing as one of the solutions, it should actually be a neighborhood policing. And then see, when you are going from neighborhood to neighborhood, if you are managing neighborhoods, it will be easy to identify issues. But when you talk about community, okay, I'm going to work with the Somali community, I'm going to work with the South Sudanese community. That also looks like these are either targeted communities or these are communities that have issues, and people begin to move away, and those who are already involved in the gang would pull, quickly influence and pull those young fellows away. The other thing is also, as communities, putting our resources and hands together, as my brother Gargar has said, is very important. This integration of community support is a problem, because and then these gangs find it easy to get in there and they become the saviors of that support, and they pull out these people very easily. The other thing that the system doesn't recognize and should be recognizing and looking at is these are youth who are 16, 17, 18 years old. Of course, they want a sense of belonging. They want something that they can also take from their pocket and buy what they want to buy. And so with no employment, if the system could develop programs where some of these youth could really be engaged in a way that they have some income, I think no matter how little that income is, when they get used to that income that they can manage, they wouldn't be running for the big money. Otherwise, with the needs, simple example is you get a youth going into a 7-Eleven just to rob cigarette. And then after that, he goes into these bigger groups and becomes a gang. So those are some of the things that I look at it as solutions that if we were to implement some of those things, bring services to the people, to the neighborhood, and it will absolutely be supportive and helpful. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Joseph. Now, as we wrap up and we get to the end of our meeting, I'd like perhaps maybe two people, just for the sake of time, to just comment, what is the way forward? What should we be looking forward to?
I was just going to say, I think the key is early intervention for a lot of these individuals, because a lot of us with police, oftentimes we end up dealing with them on the end side of things when they're getting arrested. When they're in their late teens, early 20s, and they've already kind of gone through getting recruited into that lifestyle, and then we're starting to intervene at that point. So really the early intervention and partnerships that people have been discussing with schools and members of the community is so important. I think connecting with people in the community and sharing knowledge of what to look out for in terms of type of behaviors that might change with these youth when they start getting attracted to this lifestyle. And some people, some parents, I mean, that we run into don't know these types of things that may be these behavioral changes that are kind of signaling people being drawn to that lifestyle. You know, things such as youth starting to own and wear property that's beyond their means. So if they're from like a lower socioeconomic class and they're suddenly sporting, you know, expensive shoes or different clothes or perhaps vehicles and so on and so forth. Owning property beyond their means, I think, is a big one. You know, things I think parents should be looking for would be, you know, obviously absenteeism from school, change of friends, secrecy, if they're coming home with injuries and stuff like that, as well as perhaps owning multiple cell phones, as you know, drug dealing is a big part of this lifestyle, and oftentimes multiple cell phones is an indication of involvement in that. So I think knowledge for the community and community members and parents to be aware of these type of things to look out for is a big one. And then really just covering off kind of 360 degrees, everything we can. So if risk factors are financial, if they're to do with friends or at school, if we can try to cover off some of these programs that my other colleagues have mentioned that can help intervene early on and help connect individuals and youth with programs to help them kind of out of this type of lifestyle and to give them maybe some support and some connection is a big one. Job training and so on. So I think looking at this from multifaceted approach is the best way to go about it.
I think Constable Wickenmeyer covered it off perfectly. I think the way forward is for us to all act collectively, presenting a united front. When we talk about the only other thing is the community acceptance for levels of violence. When we start to look at the expectation that a community places on their behavior for their young people, and the level of acceptance and tolerance for violence or violent behavior or gang support behavior, that's something we look to the community to help us shift the needle on the behavior that they accept out of the people that they support, out of the people that they are associated to or that are in their families or in their communities. We look to the community to help set the standard on what their expectations are. And we as police need to listen and hear community members in what they need, and the community needs to hear police and what we're seeing and what we're concerned about. So that's the way forward. So I think everybody else has said it wonderfully otherwise. So thank you.
So much. I feel like this is just the beginning of a conversation. There's so much more we could discuss in the future. So just a warning, we will definitely be coming back to having this conversation again, because I feel like we didn't really have enough time to cover everything that we would love to cover. So thank you so much for everybody for really committing your time to being here. And just, I know it's almost supper time for some of you. I know we lost Constable Booth. I think Sergeant Booth, sorry, he just left because he had to go for supper. So I want to thank all of you for the commitment that you showed today to really participate in this conversation. I'm gonna let Rhea summarize everything. And once again, thank you so much to each and every one of you. I know some of you had more to speak, but we didn't have a lot of time, but we will be back. Rhea?
Yes, I think Harriet said it well. Thank you to everyone who was involved in this conversation. This is one of many conversations that we think that is important for the community, community workers, the police force, and everyone to have, because this isn't something that will be solved with only one person. Like we all need to work together in order to curb some of these problems. So thank you to everyone who was involved today, and hopefully this is just one of many conversations to come.
Thank you for watching Diversity TV Community Newscast from Harriet Tinker. See you next week. Please make sure to subscribe and hit the notification button so that you are the first to get the news as we upload it. We are on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram.